5 passages that Mr. Rufo cited appeared to have been taken partly from other published work without quotation marks. Some academics, however, have characterized the campaign as racist. Kamala Harris is not just a liar, she's also a cheater. She is being credibly accused of plagiarism by the great independent journalist Christopher Rufo. Take a look at this very thorough thread that he put out on the X platform. Kamala Harris plagiarized at least a dozen sections of her criminal justice book, Smart on Crime, according to a new investigation. The current vice president even lifted material from Wikipedia. And we have the receipts. Let's go through them together, shall we? The investigation was conducted by Dr. Steven Weber, a famed Austrian plagiarism hunter who has taken down politicians in the German-speaking world. We independently confirmed multiple violations which are comparable in severity to the plagiarism found in former Harvard President Claudine Gay's doctoral thesis. Now, this is a running theme now going on with the President Harvard Gay of Harvard, but I think they also found plagiarism with the president of Columbia, or was it UPenn? There's a whole lot of plagiarism going on in the Ivy Leagues and in academia. Everyone's just sort of copy pasting. I know they found one in the University of Maryland president also was plagiarizing somebody, apparently. And that's exactly what Dr. Steven Weber did. Here's the New York Times featuring who this guy is, terrorizing the German-speaking world, the plagiarism hunter. And here he explains the summary of findings here in Kamala Harris's book. Copied virtually an entire Wikipedia article into her book without providing any attribution to Wikipedia, fabricated a source reference inventing a non-existent page number, self-promotional content from Goodwill Industries was copied verbatim without citing the source. And in many other instances, even when a source was cited with a footnote, the text was directly copied and pasted without using quotation marks. Quotation marks would have been the most transparent and honest approach also in non-academic books. He also says the further signs of dishonesty may be evident when sources were copied, but specific details were altered, such as replacing a Subway store owner with a sandwich shop clerk or highlighting Southeast Asia in the context of the U.S. gang problem. Again, the book is called Smart on Crime. Anytime Kamala Harris writes a book with the title, with the word smart in the title, you know there's something up. Here's a good example right here. Begin with a passage in which Harris discusses high school graduation rates. Here she lifted verbatim language from an uncited AP-NBC News report. This is the Kamala Harris book on the left. This is an Associated Press report. It truly is just a copy paste. In the AP report, it said nationally, 70% of U.S. students. Here she said overall, 70% of U.S. graduates from public and private schools, but then continues it. I mean, that's not even close to being legitimate. That is full-on plagiarism, and that's just the beginning. In another section of the book, Harris, without proper attribution, reproduced extensive sections from a John Jay College of Criminal Justice press release. Look at that. Look at that. The only difference, one word, additional. Strategy in 10 additional cities. Here it's strategy in 10 cities, which, by the way, makes this even worse. I've heard people who have plagiarized. Listen, I've been writing on the web as a blogger, as a writer and editor. I've worked on multiple websites, Breitbart, Washington Times, Washington Examiner, town hall sites, including Hot Air. And sometimes you come across accusations of plagiarism. No one's accused me of plagiarism, but sometimes I've known writers who have been accused of plagiarism. And sometimes it's, oh, Larry, what do? I copied something from a web page and as a source material, right? And then I was just going to use it as a source as I wrote something about that information in my article, and then I was going to cite it, but I forgot to. And instead of like deleting it or rewriting it and putting it in my own words, which is also problematic, I forgot and I accidentally left it in there. A friend of mine actually ran into this problem one time. And I've heard of people who will like copy something over from Wikipedia or something, and they use it just to sort of fill the space in their article. And then when they go back, they rewrite it in their own words or something like that. And again, I don't think that that's legit, but it's certainly not copy and paste plagiarism like this. The fact that they left it in but changed one word tells you that this was deliberate and premeditated. They knew exactly what they had done. They went in to add a word. They didn't rewrite this. They didn't accidentally leave it in. They deliberately changed one word to try to make it read better. It's obvious. It's blatant, right? More here. In a section about a New York courtroom, Harris stole long passages directly from Wikipedia, long considered an unreliable source. Yeah, exactly. Imagine copying from Wikipedia. If you're at the military academies and you're found to have copied and pasted like from Wikipedia for one of your papers, you're kicked out, or at the very least, you're put on disciplinary action, on restriction. And if you do it again, you're kicked out. If you are applying for a job, and there's an instance of this kind of thing in your past, or if you have to write an essay or something as part of your job application program and you do that, you'd be terminated, that you wouldn't even be considered for the job. Look at that. Look at the copy and paste here. There's more instances, by the way. Harris also copied language from a Bureau of Justice. Oops. Hey, hold on there, Larry. Steady. Justice Assistance Report, which was linked in the Wikipedia entry. So first she copies and pastes the Wikipedia page. Then she follows one of the links and goes back and copies and pastes the Wikipedia source material for her book. And it goes on and on. As I said, they found a dozen instances. So Christopher Rufo lays all that out there for all the world to see. And then the New York Times wrote an article about it. And this is where Christopher Rufo steps in again. According to the New York Times, this is not plagiarism, presumably because Kamala Harris added the word additional. Yeah, right here, the New York Times says because that one word additional was added, it's not really plagiarism. Yeah, look at that headline. Conservative activist seizes on passages from Harris' book. And then in the article, it says there's more than 5 passages. There's over a dozen. 5 passages that Mr. Rufo cited appeared to have been taken partly from other published work without quotation marks. Some academics, however, have characterized the campaign as racist. Yeah, because if you point out Kamala Harris's plagiarism, you're racist. The New York Times article also cites a plagiarism expert who said, yeah, this really isn't that serious. Well, everybody found this guy, this plagiarism expert on the X platform on Twitter. And they started asking him questions. He replied late in the day and he said, listen, it's a holiday. It was Columbus Day yesterday. It's a holiday, so I haven't really been focusing. For everybody asking about the New York Times article, let me just make it clear. I didn't read the book. I didn't read Kamala Harris's book. I didn't analyze the whole thing. I was reacting to 5 excerpts that the New York Times sent to me, and they asked my opinion. So in other words, the New York Times had this article. They wanted a plagiarism expert to comment on it. So they snipped out 5 examples of Kamala Harris's plagiarism, sent them to this guy and say, what do you think? Is this serious? And he said, well, it doesn't look serious to me. And that was it. That's how the New York Times does their job. And by does their job, I mean protects Kamala Harris. J.D. Vance yesterday on the fly responding to these accusations.
I saw today actually a story that Kamala Harris apparently copied some significant chunks of her book from Wikipedia. So if you want a president with their own ideas, vote for Donald Trump. If you want a president who copies her own ideas from Wikipedia, vote for Kamala Harris.
You know, there was a time when a presidential candidate being credibly accused of plagiarism would be done, finished, like would be forced to drop out because it was, well, such a horrible thing to be accused of, such a horrible thing to be guilty of, because it tells what a fake and a fraud and a phony you are. There was a time when this would nearly end a political career. And I'm just not saying that rhetorically. There literally was a time. That time was called 1988. And the candidate was Joe Biden. He was running in the Democrat nominee process, the primaries for the nomination for president to run against eventually George Herbert Walker Bush. And Joe Biden, well, take a look at how the media, CBS News, ironically, covered the story then.
Democratic presidential candidate Joseph Biden today faces a controversy that his opponents could use in raising questions about his character. 3 weeks ago, at a debate at the Iowa State Fair, he used phrases identical to those delivered by British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock.
Biden seemed to be claiming Kinnock's vision and life as his own.
Why is it that my wife, who's sitting out there in the audience, is the first in her family to ever go to college?
Why is Gladys the first woman in her family, in 1,000 generations, to be able to get to university?
My ancestors who worked in the coal mines in northeast Pennsylvania don't come up after 12 hours and play football for 4 hours.
Those people who could work 8 hours underground, and then come up and play football.
It's because they didn't have a platform upon which to stand.
There was no platform upon which they could stand.
The notion that every thought or notion or idea you'd have to go back and find and attribute to someone, I think is, quite frankly, ludicrous.
The problem here is that Senator Biden told his audience he'd just been thinking about these things, and he failed to give any credit at all to his famous British speechwriter.
You know, I was thinking on the way over here. Now, that's a little too much because, as you point out, what's behind the words? What's there? And a lot of people, the rap on Biden has always been that it's just a surface.
I should have said, to paraphrase Neil Kinnock, it's the only time I didn't, and all the times I've ever used it.
But CBS News found a tape of a second instance.
It showed up in Iowa, site of the first 1988 caucuses, then reappeared in the New York Times with a new charge, that Biden had appropriated a famous litany from the late Robert Kennedy about what the gross national product cannot measure.
It cannot measure the health of our children,
The health of our children,
the quality of our education,
the quality of their education,
the joy of their play.
or the joy of their play.
Biden gave Kennedy no credit. He has also quoted or paraphrased John Kennedy, Hubert Humphrey, and British Labour Party leader Neil Kinnock, all without credit.
Joseph Biden admitted today that he committed plagiarism when he was in law school. He said it was a mistake, but that it was unintentional.
Now, this report actually, which is another great shot into journalism past of 1988, goes on for another 3 minutes. This is a 5.5-minute segment on the evening news about this. You don't see segments more than 90 seconds now on the evening news, and they're certainly not laid out like this, not when the subject matter is a Democrat, and certainly not that guy. But you just saw it. You know, he admitted to plagiarism in law school. He admitted to plagiarism, or was caught plagiarizing on the campaign trail, plagiarizing Robert Kennedy, John Kennedy. Neil Kinnock was the latest one, the labor leader in England, and he was forced out of the race. He quit. He had to drop out because this scandal was so burdensome. And as you saw from the delightful Connie Chung in the opening segment of that CBS News report, this is an issue that calls into the question his character. What kind of person does this? It's his character that was the issue. So where's the report at CBS News or ABC or NBC or anywhere for that matter about this character question revolving around Kamala Harris? And why is the only way this is getting covered at the New York Times focusing on the conservative right-of-center journalist who discovered it? I mean, they may not like the fact that the person who discovered this and brought attention to it was a right-of-center journalist, but the fact of the matter is, it's not his fault that the New York Times doesn't do any investigative journalism of Democrats anymore.